I was originally gonna hold off on my Oscars predictions until Cannes, but I got bored, so here are my early predictions, and there have been a few changes from last time. Also, I will be taking a crack at almost every category this time around, with the exception of shorts and the documentary, international, or animated feature categories. So, wish me luck. We have new films to talk about that I hadn't considered last time. First, of course, is Sinners, which I did review. However, regardless of the praise I have to personally give to this movie, it is undeniably super popular. I believe it will take on the role that Wicked and Barbie did in the last 2 years of Oscars, being that big popular culture pick that mainstream audiences and casuals will be championing. Sinners did come out in April, so there is a possibility the hype dies down, but all in all, I think its chances are solid. I shouldn't have doubted Ryan Coogler. Also, The Rivals of Amziah King is different from Sinners, being definitely an under-the-radar indie movie, but it has premiered to large critical acclaim and has accrued a big fandom, or at the very least a passionate fandom. A distributor hasn't picked it up yet, supposedly because bidding is competitive, but I have no doubt that a high-level distributor is going to pick it up, and Rivals of Amziah King likely becomes its main representative if so. I did want to keep in mind some directorial debuts out and about, and this seems to be the biggest lead so far. That is 2 new films entering the Best Picture race. On the other hand, I think we can rule out, highest to lowest, the new Spike Lee film remaking Akira Kurosawa's acclaimed classic. The fact that Cannes seems to be shoving this one under the rug suggests it might not be that good. I was always a little worried it was going to be more reminiscent of Spike Lee's earlier attempt to remake Oldboy, and maybe it seems like the case. I could be wrong, but I'm trusting word of mouth here. Mickey 17 was good and well liked, but not to the extent that it needed to be. Warner Bros. Alone has already released Sinners, which has likely stolen Mickey 17's thunder. Michael is having behind-the-scenes issues. In either case, things are messy, and unless proven otherwise, I'll be ignoring it. Also, I was gung-ho about Bradley Cooper's next film, Is This Thing On?, but I have my doubts it's gonna come out this year. All of the other shortlist contenders I discussed in my last video, however, are still bouncing about in my noggin, even if some of my opinions and priorities have changed. But with that said, I want to first go into the individual categories to set some context for Best Picture. Best Production Design. So, for Best Production Design, we want to look not only at big and intricate sets, but bonus points if it is nostalgic in some way, whether it is depicting old Hollywood or paying homage to an older film. Wicked for Good, like its predecessor, is practically a lock to get nominated for all the same reasons Wicked 1 did. These are big flashy sets, and also the homage to Wizard of Oz helps too. Del Toro's newest film, Frankenstein, however, also seems up there. From the promotional images alone, yeah, these are some sets, dude. The Avatar films pretty reliably get in, even if I don't think they're in winning conversation. It's a bit hard to tell which is physically there and which are visual effects, though, so again, I'm rooting it out a winning conversation. Sinners, I think, gets in. There are definitely physical sets, and there are period piece sets too, so Sinners is going to be a big Oscars contender. I don't see why this wouldn't get in. Granted, I do see a timeline where it gets snubbed. The top 4 were easy, but the rest were kinda tough. I hesitantly went with Begonia because I feel like recent Yorgos Lanthimos films tend to reliably slip into this category, although my concern with Begonia, being about a CEO being kidnapped by conspiracy theorists, is that there aren't going to be a lot of sets, since it feels like it could be relatively sedentary. Still, it's Lanthimos, so if it does take place in one room, it's gonna be a weird room. I did consider one battle after another, but from the trailer, the sets didn't seem all that noticeable. Hamnet could be good for period piece stuff, but I think Sinners and even Frankenstein could overshadow it. And you would think Wes Anderson's definition scheme would be a shoo-in, but Wes Anderson films tend to get goose-egged, so... As for who is winning, Wicked for Good is the obvious pick, but I'm going to predict Frankenstein, for now, since I think sequels tend to get less wins than their predecessor, and production design might be a decent place to start. Best Visual Effects. I think Best Visual Effects tends to be straightforward. Nothing amateurish, nothing too avant-garde. They like big and expensive CGI. The issue is, however, this year has a lot of contenders to root out. But the first pick is very easy, and the obvious winner, Avatar 3: Fire and Ash, is gonna steamroll just like every other Avatar film. I think James Gunn's next film, Superman, looks pretty likely though. While Marvel films have been far from guaranteed noms, all of the Guardian of the Galaxy films, James Gunn's contributions, have gotten nominated without fail, and effects in the trailer do look good. Besides, nominating the comeback DC film could still give the Academy the satisfaction of not going with Marvel, which has a reputation of being on the cheaper side, I think, while still going with an effects-heavy superhero film. Assuming Superman is good, of course. I hope it's good. The last Mission Impossible film got in, so why not? And now the new How to Train Your Dragon live-action remake, as disgruntled as I am by the fact that this exists, does have legitimately impressive effects. I can't deny that. All in all, I think it's likely going to get rewarded. And as for my last nomination, I did go with Sinners. The vampire effects did look pretty good, but honestly what impressed me a lot, the same as Mickey 17, is the effect of having Michael B. Jordan's dual roles fit in seamlessly. While I might argue Mickey 17 did look a bit more seamless, I think Sinners overall benefits from bigger buzz. I did originally have Wicked 2 since the original got in, but I changed it at the last minute. Wicked 1, I think, barely got in, and sequels get less attention than the original. This could be the first place Wicked 2 gets cut. But again, we have a lot of options. I was going to add Tron Ares, but the previous Tron movie didn't get in. The live-action Lilo and Stitch honestly also looks kinda good, but How to Train Your Dragon looks a good bit flashier. And if a Marvel film does get in, it's probably going to be the Fantastic Four movie. Hell, you're not going to see that here, but I'm still hopeful Mickey 17 gets in. Best Cinematography. Now, ASC is obviously not going to help right now, so I'm going to go with the films I think are going to get into Best Picture, or are at least into conversation, which ones are flashiest. I would be surprised if Sinners does not get nominated. It provides everything the Academy theoretically likes, from stark colors, cool lighting effects, its fair share of iconic one-takes. The cinematographer, Autumn Durald, is a relative newcomer, so there's a chance the cinematographer's branch turns their nose up to her, but I'm going to have faith that the obvious pick is going to get at least a nomination. Also, cinematography especially tends to be male-heavy, so if Autumn wins here, she would actually be the first woman winner in this category, I think. Best Cinematography is still the only technical category where a woman has never won, just something to note. Now, I'm assuming Del Toro's Frankenstein is going to give cinematographers something to chew on. Marty Supreme is looking like a massive Oscars contender, so sure. Lanthimos tends to have flashy shots, so let's get in Bugonia. And After the Hunt, I don't know dude, I think Challengers looked good. My confidence isn't high at the moment with this category, but I am still locking in Sinners as my predicted winner. There are still plenty of films to come, of course, but I think Sinners has a lot going for it. Best Film Editing is a lame category lately. It's only Best Picture nominees, so spoilers for 5 of my predictions, I guess. I think Sinners is very likely going to get in here, again. The editing can be pretty flashy, and I think genre films tend to do decently. Marty Supreme is my predicted winner based off of Uncut Gems, though. Honestly, I think it's probably going to be a very editing-oriented film. So is After the Hunt, based off of Challengers and Queer last year. If After the Hunt is a Best Picture nom, they might actually recognize that. Wicked for Good could get snubbed due to sequelitis, but again, I'm only considering potential Best Picture nominees here, so we don't have a lot of other options. Wicked 1 got in. I think this is a fairly reliable prediction. And lastly, maybe Bugonia. I could see Rivals of Amziah King getting in for being that odd editing pick, but I really need to see the film first to see if it's that kind of film. As you can tell, Best Film Editing is a category I fill in last when doing these videos, so I'm doing this a little out of order here. I think this is the most likely 5. While this isn't always the case, Best Sound tends to lean towards Best Picture nominees and lean towards films that bring sound front and center.
Say the line, Bart!
Sinners would be an obvious frontrunner here, as the movie is to an extent about music and therefore sound. However, Avatar Fire and Ash works as a big blockbuster action movie, which tends to get sound noms. The other Avatar films got nominated here too. Deliver Me From Nowhere, the Bruce Springsteen biopic, is likely also going to bring music front and center, and since I'm guessing this is the biopic that's going to be closest to the Best Picture race, I'm bringing it in here. Wicked for Good is a musical, and the original got nominated, and my last nom is also going to go to a big blockbuster. the final Mission Impossible movie since the first part got nominated for sound. Although I considered F1 and Tron Ares as other big blockbusters, especially Tron, since the other Tron movies got nominated, I'm gonna go with Mission Impossible. As for winners, I'm gonna go with Sinners, unless proven otherwise. I'm worried recency bias is taking the helm and I'm over-predicting Sinners. I probably am, but come on, you gotta give it to me to at least sound, right? Best Original Score. I don't know which score has the bwomps, so for now I'm gonna go with Sinners. Although I'm well aware this could be the Challenger Spider-Verse-esque snub that happens every year, where the score is too good, I guess, for the Academy to nominate. I'm scared. Hold me. From there, Alexander Desplat is a reliable person to look at, so I'm nominating Del Toro's Frankenstein. One Battle After Another seems to have a neat score according to the trailers. Reznor and Ross are also consistent names, so After the Hunt could be their challenger's redemption. And Jerskin Fendrix also established a name for himself at Poor Things earlier, so sure, Bugonia's safe. I went with safe noms here, but I'm fine with that. Who knows what's gonna actually happen in Best Score? Best Original Song. Obviously, I don't know too much about what songs are gonna be in conversation until I actually listen to them. I was gonna go with a rather controversial snub. I only included one song from Sinners, and I was gonna go with the end credits Dangerous over I Lied to You. Then I listened to Dangerous. I'm keeping I Lied to You in there. Sure, Dangerous is more of that kind of pop song they always tend to go for, but they're not gonna do this, right? Right? Otherwise, if Wicked 2's having multiple songs and they're good, 2 are probably slipping in. Diane Warren is always gonna get a slot. If there is a year where she gets snubbed, it's gonna be this year. Best Original Song is unusually tight, but Diane Warren is a force. What does she have, like a dozen noms at this point? And since Kendrick Lamar and SZA are all the rage, I think an original song from them, especially from a Trey and Parker collab, is very likely in too. All it takes is either the Wicked 2 songs not being up to snuff, or the Trey Parker movie being too South Park for Academy tastes, for another Sinners song to slip in, of course. But even then, look out for Zootopia 2. I know Zootopia 1 didn't get in, but it feels like something they would do. It just does. Best Costumes. Now, costume design doesn't necessarily rely on the same set of Best Picture nominees and values loud and proud costumes, especially the weird stuff, in addition to the period piece flair. For that, I reckon Wicked for Good is a frontrunner for the same reason that Wicked 1 won last year. I think it is most likely to win here. But I tend to think the Academy prefers to vote for original films rather than sequels, so I would consider a win for Frankenstein, which I'm guessing will combine period piece aspects and weird designs a la Poor Things. Sinners, again, gets in. It is a period piece, and especially the stuff of Michael B. Jordan's dual roles, giving the two twins different colors and styles, is pretty flashy, and there is that one sequence. Kiss of the Spider-Woman is an interesting pick. It's a musical film consisting of a lot of musical performances by Jennifer Lopez's character. It looks pretty flashy apparently, so I think it can be that avant-garde pick that the costume branch especially likes to recognize. And for the last pick, I mentioned Lanthimos' Poor Things earlier, so I think his next film is a likely nom. Although it depends on how many costumes there might not be a lot. One should also consider Hedda and Ann Lee as potential grand period pieces. Ann Lee is a musical too, so maybe there's something to that. Maybe I should put Ann Lee in over Bugonia. I won't. I'm predicting Wicked for Good to win. Best Makeup and Hairstyling. And now for the prosthetics branch. Unfortunately, it's a great year for monster movies. I think Del Toro's Frankenstein is the easy pick for doing the Frankenstein. If it is likely to win one award, I think it's Makeup and Hairstyling. It's Frankenstein. 28 years later is a zombie movie. Sinners is a vampire movie, so I think both feature makeup and prosthetics front and center. I considered not nominating Wicked for Good because it's a sequel, and I feel like the original barely got in last year. However, I've seen the stage musical, and I know the second part is going to have new tricks up its sleeve that are going to impress the Academy, unless if they do that stuff at CGI, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be practical. I have a hunch. Kiss of the Spider-Woman is going to get in, I think. I feel less confident in this than in costumes, but maybe. I don't know. I need to see the movie. Or maybe it's the Smashing Machine, since Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson looks pretty dang transformed-ish. I think the movie is going to be a bit divisive, but the makeup branch I think is fairly good about separating the craft from the movie. If Michael comes out this year and isn't too controversial, I think it gets in here. I do have a question though. I know The Life of Chuck details a man through various stages in life, but how much of that is done with makeup, or just using other actors? If it's the former, The Life of Chuck gets in. If it's the latter, it doesn't. There are so many options here, but now we are going to transition over to the acting categories. Best Supporting Actor. I'm following the hype for now that Adam Sandler is probably going to be a standout in Jay Kelly and finally get his Oscar nom, or maybe even win for it. Noah Baumbach, I feel from Marriage Story at least, gets good performances out of his actors, and Adam Sandler has always felt like one of those actors with untapped potential. Well, not untapped, he's been very good in other things before, but you know what I mean, you. I have a hunch that Jeremy Strong might be the next Meryl Streep. Well, we all know he wants to be the next Daniel Day-Lewis, but either way, I know he has acting chops and he is appearing yet again in a pretty big acting contender. I think he's Bruce Springsteen's manager in Deliver Me From Nowhere. I think that movie is going to be a good acting showcase, and Jeremy Strong clearly has the skills to stand out. Not to mention, I think we all just want to give him awards right now. Now, after The Hunt is generally predicted to be an acting showcase, and I don't see why it wouldn't be unless the Academy just really didn't vibe with Luca Guadagnino, which is possible. Still, it's Andrew Garfield, and although he's playing an unlikable character, I think a sort of villainous performance isn't automatically disqualified. Like, one could compare this to Guy Pearce in The Brutalist. I'm guessing an unlikable but memorable character associated with a well-liked and well-remembered actor. I don't know if sentimental value is going to be as big a deal as I'm maybe currently predicting it to be. We'll find out in Cannes, but let's assume it is. Stellan Skarsgård probably gets in with his fatherly performance. He's probably going to have some good material here. And my last predicted nom is a bit funky. Stavros Halkias? Is that how you pronounce it? Well, he's a funny guy. I feel like a lot of us aren't treating him super seriously, but Yorgos Lanthimos films often feature very prominent supporting performances that get nominated, and based off of what the movie is presumably about, I think this is the one that will surprise. Let's not treat being kinda goofy as a bad thing here. Yorgos Lanthimos is a very goofy director, and Begonia feels like one of his goofier films. I feel like it could be a match made in heaven, and this nom is gonna happen. Now, I've not forgotten about Delroy Lindo in Sinners, who seems to be the supporting performance people are talking about from that movie, nor have I forgotten about Miles Catton, although I think that would be a pretty big case of category fraud. One could also make the argument for Sean Penn in One Battle After Another, who, based off of test screenings, is supposedly the standout. I made the argument for Andrew Garfield playing an unlikable character, but One Battle After Another looks like more of a genre film. I don't know if this performance is going to get as much traction, even if it is very good, but consider, maybe this movie is very, very good. Best Supporting Actress. I think we're all agreed that Ariana Grande is getting in for Wicked 2. I don't think she's winning, yet again, but definitely getting nominated. Ayo Edebiri from After the Hunt has been having her moment for a while, and I think it's nigh inevitable she's gonna get an Oscar nomination at some point in her career. Why not now? It's gonna be maybe a more dramatic role than what we've seen, but I trust Edebiri to stand out. Like with Jeremy Strong, I think we all want to give her awards. Angelina Lookingglass is apparently a standout in The Rivals of Amziah King, maybe more prominent in the second half than in the first I've heard, maybe something closer to an actual supporting performance, which ironically hurts her in the supporting categories, but I've heard enough good things about her performance to predict her nomination. It appears that Laura Dern is going to be the standout in Noah Baumbach's next film. If I had a nickel for every time that happened, it's a safe nom, I'll have her here for now. And Gwyneth Paltrow's likely going to be heavily featured in Marty Supreme, which I think is going to be a big Oscars frontrunner. The problem is that it's Gwyneth Paltrow, an actress who is pretty divisive as a person. There's a chance people aren't going to be as eager to nominate her.
I had an exorcism.
Oh, wow.
However, if they love the movie, and also remembered acting Branch sometimes doesn't give a darn or dandy about what the young people think, then they'll probably have her in anyway. Also, I might be biased against her considering Goop.
You want to talk about the vulva?
I have a hard time treating her seriously, I'm afraid, especially as somebody who hasn't really seen her in any of her good performances before. Maybe she'll be good in this movie. I would have a hard time believing she's cast in it if she wasn't. It's just that I think people would be looking for any reason not to nominate her in the end, so this nom is on thin ice. I tried keeping my mind open for other options, but the only other one I can't help but wonder about is Glenn Close in the new Knives Out film. But I feel like we do this every time, predicting an actress from a Knives Out film, and that just doesn't happen. I love the first two Knives Out films, so hey, I'd love it if this happened, but I'm not counting on it. My guess for the win is currently Angelina Lookingglass, although I admit that's mostly because that's one of the few performances here people have actually seen and praised. I do have a hunch about her though, so go big or go home. Best Actor. I truly think this is going to be Timothée Chalamet's time. If Uncut Gems gave Adam Sandler his time to shine as a very good actor, just imagine what they could do with Timothée Chalamet, who we've all been clearly eager to award anyways. Marty Supreme has been described as a mix between Catch Me If You Can and Wolf of Wall Street, so naturally I can't help but draw comparisons between Timothée Chalamet and Leonardo DiCaprio. Now, I'm well aware DiCaprio didn't win for either of those performances, and I am worried they're just gonna keep snubbing Chalamet until he's in his 40s like they did with DiCaprio, until his overdue narrative spills over into a performance people aren't actually that excited for. I have a faith that we've learned from this, however. If Chalamet is as great in this performance as I think he's gonna be, I think he's the safest prediction to win, and at the very least, a safe prediction to get nominated. Jeremy Allen White is, say with me, having his moment, and say with me again, we all just want to give him awards right now. He's playing Bruce Springsteen, and I think a music biopic performance is always liable to slip in and become a potential winning contender, especially if it's going to be by current Bear star Jeremy Allen White. Jesse Plemons and Yorgos Lanthimos is, in my opinion, a very good combo, and I think Begonia is going to give him his moments. I don't know if it's a winning nom, poor guy can't catch a break, but it could break him out of his typecasting out of other performances, and I think people will be interested in that. George Clooney from Noah Baumbach's Jay Kelly feels pretty likely. Again, I think Noah Baumbach works well with his actors. And for my last pick, I went maybe with Matthew McConaughey from The Rivals of Amziah King, although largely by default. I heard he disappears for a chunk of the movie, and I'm not sure if Rivals of Amziah King is going to get a lot of nominations. Still, if the movie's well liked, naturally that benefits him. I did end up snubbing Michael B. Jordan for Sinners. I didn't want to, but I don't see it being a nominated performance personally. Same for Leonardo DiCaprio in One Battle After Another. I think his presence helps the movie get noms, but oddly enough, I feel like he's often not included in those noms. And from the trailers, I don't see this one being any different. Even though PTA and DiCaprio seem on paper to be a legendary combo, but this isn't like a There Will Be Blood, Phantom Dread situation, this seems more like a Licorice Pizza kind of thing, so. Best Actress. Like with Ariana Grande, I don't see a world where Cynthia Erivo gets snubbed here, but I don't see her winning. I also don't see a world where Emma Stone gets snubbed for Begonia, although she's also unlikely to get a win after having just won 2 years ago for another Yorgos Lanthimos film. Still, I think it's a likely nomination. She's playing the CEO who gets kidnapped, so there's probably going to be a lot of good material here. I think the performance most likely to win Best Actress at this moment is Julia Roberts in After the Hunt. Although in a weird way, I also think there's a chance she gets snubbed if After the Hunt doesn't catch on. Same with Io Edebiri and Andrew Garfield. It does feel like a juicy role. She's playing a college professor dealing with a moral conundrum, so I think I feel safe with this nom at the very least. Jessie Buckley, I feel less good about. I have no doubt she's going to be good in Hamnet, playing Shakespeare's grieving wife, but I've come down on Hamnet considerably since my last Oscars video. I think the Oscars experts and Brother Bro made good points, shout out to them. Hamnet feels like Oscars bait on the surface, but are people really going to be excited to nominate it? For that I replace Hamnet with Begonia as the main Focus Features rep. I was on the fence anyway, but maybe I'd need to read the original book to decide. Even if Hamnet doesn't catch on, Jessie Buckley feels likely enough to get in. And Renata Reinsve, who of course got notoriously snubbed for her performance in Joaquin Trier's previous film, The Worst Person in the World. If sentimental value is catching on, she absolutely goes along with it. I just don't know if sentimental value is catching on. I'm gonna bet it does for now, but we'll wait for Cannes. Other contenders, well, Amanda Seyfried is also having a bit of a moment and is having a showy musical performance in Anne Lee, and we also have to consider Olivia Colman. Best Casting. Uh-oh, what's this? It's a new category. The very first edition of Best Casting, the newest award into Oscars. Since we don't have previous history to work off of, we kinda have to guess. I think Wicked for Good is very likely getting nominated since it features such a wide cast with very showy roles across the board. However, Sinners is not far behind it, featuring a wide ensemble cast. I'm currently predicting this to win, however, I am aware of a problem. I did not predict any individual noms for Sinners into acting categories. Not Miles Catton, not Michael B. Jordan, not Delroy Lindo. Could that hurt Best Casting? Probably, but I'm still gonna do it. One Battle After Another is a very likely nom, but I don't see it as a likely win. Same with Marty Supreme, although a trailer could change my mind. I worry with Marty Supreme its leading performances might overshadow the supporting cast too much, but we just don't know how the Academy's gonna vote for this yet, so maybe they'll just vote for their favorite movie, or maybe the ensemble cast is bumpin'. Deliver Me From Nowhere is my final non-prediction because of the music biopic aspects, although I do predict it to be a bit more grounded, not like a complete unknown where everybody was singing and everybody was kind of famous. If you wanted to replace it with After the Hunt or Jake Kelly, I certainly wouldn't fight you. I just default towards music biopics for acting categories when given the opportunity. Now it's time for screenplays. There are two beasts. Screenplays that are awarded for being dialogue-based, having a very engaging back and forth, or screenplays that are awarded for having memorable plots or otherwise feel-good endings. It is my current pet theory that adapted screenplay leans closer towards rewarding back-and-forth dialogue, like Conclave, American Fiction, Women Talking, and original screenplay values out-of-the-box storylines, Nora, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Now, obviously, that's not what these categories are actually about. Original screenplay refers to screenplays not adapted from previous materials, not which ones are most original, but the wording here may provide a sort of subtle bias that causes people to want to reward certain things, so let's keep that in mind as we go on. Best Adapted Screenplay. If we're looking for dialogue-based back and forth, I don't know what our frontrunner is since this all seems pretty out there, but Begonia absolutely gets in, adapting the Korean film Save the Green Planet. Same with One Battle After Another, unless if it's too genre-esque. I think Knives Out is a pretty reliable presence, even though I don't think it should count for adapted, like, it's just a sequel, what are you smoking? The Life of Chuck is, I don't know, the trailer makes it look like a schmaltzy thing, but Stephen King is pretty well liked, so I think any screenplay that adapts one of his stories has an advantage. And Deliver Me From Nowhere over Frankenstein? Am I sure about that? No. But for now, I'll lean towards music biopics, especially an adapted screenplay where they are once again valuing back and forth dialogue over out there concepts. My loosey-goosey winner prediction is Begonia, but that's more of a placeholder right now. Best Original Screenplay. My theory becomes far clearer with original screenplay because I think Sinners fits these themes to a T. Not only does it have an out-of-the-box original concept, but it comes with social critique, a match made in heaven. However, if I was to guess, Marty Supreme and Jake Kelly are both more reliable predictions for noms, as I think there is a chance Sinners could also get snubbed outright. It has a low floor, but a high ceiling. From here, the script for After the Hunt supposedly leaked and it is supposedly good. That is part of the reason why I felt rather confident about this film. The last slot is up in the air. I went with Searchlight's Rental Family since its concept seems vaguely interesting, and the film is co-written by Hikari, who wrote for Beef, so I do feel reasonably confident in its chances. Granted, obviously Rivals of Amziah should also be considered here. Best Director, for me, tends to lean Best Picture on the fancy side. I think the most likely to get in are either Josh Safdie for Marty Supreme or Yorgos Lanthimos for Begonia. Yorgos Lanthimos feels like a pretty consistent inclusion, while Josh Safdie by this point has a reputation that I think will get him in if Marty Supreme is as good as we think it is. From there, however, anything can happen. It's hard to imagine Paul Thomas Anderson not getting in, although if he was to get snubbed, it would be for a more genre film like One Battle After Another. Based off the trailers alone, I don't see a lot of PTA flair, but we'll see once we see the movie. Joaquin Trier absolutely feels like a director's branch inclusion, even if sentimental value doesn't get into picture. I think Trier is likely to get into director. And as for the last pick, you would think it's Ryan Coogler for Sinners, considering how many tech categories I have the film nominated for and winning. However, we see year after year that the obvious genre blockbuster film gets snubbed. Dune, Barbie, Wicked, Dune again. I think Ryan Coogler is going to be the last minute surprise snub that is going to get people really, really mad. Instead, I have Andrew Patterson on here representing the relative newcomer or no name that I think tends to squeeze in there. However, if Jay Kelly, or to a lesser extent After the Hunt, impress, they could take the slot instead. I also have not forgotten about my boo Park Chan-wook. As for who is gonna win, honestly I defaulted for which film I think is most likely to get into the Best Picture conversation. I think that's Josh Safdie for Marty Supreme. After all, while director noms tend to lean towards the artsy side, the winner tends to be usually the more straightforward option. So, now it's the moment we've all been waiting for, Best Picture. As always, I'm trying to balance representing different major distributors, and I'm looking for a variety of my main demographics with the hopes of predicting a diverse lineup of films. Here's the usual spiel, feel free to skip if you've seen one of my videos already. Retirees like the kind of movie your parents like. Simple, 3-act structure films that make you feel good at the end and don't rock the boat too much. Bonus points if the film appeals to their nostalgia. For example, harkening back to the 60s or 70s, and being about real-life figures from their glory days. They continue to be the biggest voting group in the Academy. Cheerleaders are perhaps the stereotypical Oscars voter who tends to like movies about movies, and tend to vote for their friends or otherwise what makes themselves feel good about their profession and life choices. They're not as prominent as they once were, and by default I kinda assume they blend in with the retirees. Still, I'm keeping them here for now, because when a movie gives them proper cause, like The Fabelmans or Mank, they gather hard, and also I like the idea of having 5 of them. If you have an idea on which one should be the 5th slot instead, do let me know. I am open to changing this up. Popcorn munchers are more or less casual moviegoers, more in line with what your friend who has a life likes to watch. They like movies that are entertaining, but also tend to go for hot items that are frequently talked about. These are usually the big movies that release invaders that everybody's talking about for the year. Think something along the lines of Wicked. Messagers tends to vote for movies for their message or political significance. It's one thing if the movie's good, but what does the movie say about the world as a whole and stuff like that? I notice messagers tend to particularly like social satire films because one, without fail, always gets in. Arthouse snobs are the maybe pretentious sort who really dig into the craft of the movie. They tend to prop up smaller movies or auteur movies with a strong artistic vision. They have grown in prominence in recent years due to the recent expansion in the Academy, which brought in a lot of international voters, and they definitely like their arthouse stuff. To win Best Picture, you need to please most, if not all of these demographics to some extent, but for the purpose of our nominations, we generally want to make sure all, except for cheerleaders sometimes, have a main rep. We want to probably see at least one retiree-centric film, one popcorn muncher pop culture film, one political or social commentary film like a social satire pick, and one artsy selection ideally by an Oscars newcomer. Also, some helpful context here. I've tracked here the amount of nominations and wins I've given some movies that could potentially help whittle things down. As you might be able to tell, Sinners is leading with 11 nominations and 5 wins. Wicked for Good also has 11 nominations and 1 win. Frankenstein probably has too much, but I'll keep it for now. I'm sure it'll win one of them. Begonia has 10 predicted nominations. Marty Supreme and After the Hunt have 7, so on and so forth. Look at the chart. I'm throwing in Wicked for Good first, because even if it is a sequel, it is a sequel to Wicked. I don't think it's going to perform as well as the first, but I do think it's all but guaranteed to get nominated. This will be Universal's main rep over Michael, and since the latter film appears to be imploding like a dying star, I feel even more confident in Wicked 2 getting nominated. That is the most likely to get nominated. But next, I'm looking still at A24's main rep, Marty Supreme, which I'm predicting to win Best Actor and Best Director. I think just the fact that A24 is so confident in this movie makes me confident in it too. Pair that with Timothée Chalamet's star power and a Safdie brother follow-up after Uncut Gems, a movie originally snubbed by the Academy but has since become increasingly popular, and I think we have a pretty strong package. My only concern is if it's a little too weird, but I don't think A24 would be releasing it on Christmas if it was. It is going to be a little weird though, but probably the right amount of weird. The bigger changes I made, as I alluded to earlier, was swapping out Chloe Zhao's Hamnet with Yorgos Lanthimos' Bugonia as Focus Features main rep. Yeah, Hamnet felt the most like Oscars bait, but a new Yorgos Lanthimos movie is going to have a far higher ceiling. I'm also predicting it to win Best Adapted Screenplay. Don't get me wrong, there is a chance Sinners misses the nominations here, but given how much stuff I have it nominated for and winning, clearly I don't think that is going to happen. Sure, one must doubt a little bit a horror movie being released in April, but that's when our demographics come in handy. I think Sinners represents that populist original movie that has gotten in year after year ever since the pandemic, and its messaging appeals to the critical side of the Academy too. Sinners really is the package. The real challenge is maintaining that momentum for a full year. But even if the hype is only half of what it is now, and I don't think it will be, it's still probably going to get in. When normies decide on a whim to watch the Oscars next year, Sinners is going to be that one movie they recognize. Sinners is going to be that one movie they actually care about and are rooting for to win. That doesn't mean it's going to win all of them, of course, but that is an advantage no other movie this year is going to have. It's going to be Warner Brothers' main rep too, which is powerful because Warner Bros. Is a huge distributor. I think Sinners is a very reliable nomination for Best Picture. Deliver Me From Nowhere, the Bruce Springsteen biopic, appeals to an entirely different but still very reliable demographic. The retirees, those who like nostalgic and conventionally good movies without too many bells and whistles, tend to like these kind of movies about real-life figures based off of real-life things. Deliver Me From Nowhere I think is going to provide, while Michael likely will not. There's a chance the two do switch places, but I don't think that's going to happen. Jeremy Allen White starring in this movie also gives it a big advantage. The Rivals of Amziah King does have the benefit in my predictions of having been seen by people, a trait only shared with Sinners at the moment. It seems a little divisive, but the people who like it really like it. We always have to consider a directorial debut to slip in, and while before I put Sorry Baby in that slot kind of out of default, I think this is going to be the arthouse snob indie rep that makes it all the way, even if it has to be a last-minute surprise a la Nickel Boys. And apparently it's a beekeeper musical crime film, so that's awesome, dude. Rock and roll. Due to Sinners being the hit it was, I decided to swap out Frankenstein for Jay Kelly, despite the Del Toro of it all, since I don't have full faith in two horror movies getting into lineup. Jay Kelly is apparently a very good film, based off of leaks I guess, so it's pretty set up to be Netflix's main rep. Still, I do have my eye on Frankenstein. It could get in here too. I originally had The Life of Chuck as Neon's main rep, but I no longer do, for reasons I'll get into later. Instead, I included Joaquin Trier's next film, Sentimental Value, although it all depends on whether it is liked at Cannes. If it is though, I think it is the international film that gets in. A well-loved follow-up to the now cult classic The Worst Person in the World. Neon has been pretty unfailing with getting a film into Best Picture lineup lately, so if they want to put all their eggs into Sentimental Value basket, I'm not gonna get in their way. Paul Thomas Anderson's next film, One Battle After Another, has dropped considerably in my predictions, but I still have it in. It does look like way more of a genre film than I was expecting, and Warner Bros. Will likely be occupied by Sinners. Now, it doesn't rule anything out. Warner Bros. Can absolutely have two films in there, but I also don't think we can call One Battle After Another a complete lock anymore. Still, it is a Paul Thomas Anderson film. That's all I got for you. I made a last-minute change. I couldn't sleep at night if I didn't have a Searchlight film in, and so far Rental Family is its main contender, as Is This Thing On shows no sign of coming out this year. Rental Family has a lot of promise though. It is directed and co-written by one of the people behind Beef, Hikari, after all, so I think Rental Family could be a general crowd pleaser and more of an outright comedy, which is kind of missing here. I think I overall went with the 10 I think everybody's gonna go for, maybe swapping After the Hunt with Rental Family, but I hope I've shown my logic is my own here. Which movie I think is gonna win? Well, Wicked 2 I think is most likely to get nominated, but I heavily doubt it's gonna win, so I'm going to the screenplay and director winners once again, Sinners, Begonia, and Marty Supreme. I don't think it's gonna be Sinners. It could, I would be more than happy to be wrong, but ultimately it's not because Sinners is a genre film or the fact that it was released early, both apply to Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think the ending is going to throw it off. I think one thing the most recent Best Picture winners had in common, Parasite, Coda, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Oppenheimer, and Anora, is that they all had simple, quieter, and very satisfying endings, which not only sort of break away from the genre aspects, therefore quote-unquote elevating the movie into prestige into snootier minds, but kind of wrap the movie together and tell you what the movie is really about. They let the viewer think about what the movie is saying. Sinners doesn't quite do that, and in fact I heard mixed thoughts about the ending. It has mid-credit scenes, some thought it was disorienting or a little unnecessary. Maybe I'm overthinking it, and while I like how Sinners ended, that gives me doubts about its winning chances. Of course, I don't know how Begonia and Marty Supreme is gonna end, but based off of what I know about the director's style, I think Begonia is gonna be a well-loved film, but Marty Supreme is gonna get over the edge due to broader appeal and more of a sense that it is Josh Safdie's time. Lanthimos being nominated so much could almost hurt him in this case, because there's gonna be the feeling that we can always give him Best Picture another year. But this is Safdie barging into the conversation, so if Marty Supreme is as good as I think it's gonna be, then I think it's the safest current prediction to win. Anyway, here are some upsets that could enter my nomination list. After the Hunt. Now, the most obvious flaw with my predicted lineup is the lack of Amazon MGM reps. That's gonna be a problem. Honestly, a part of me is hoping Amazon is the one who acquires Rivals of Amziah King and that will solve all my problems, but I do have more faith in Searchlight as a distributor not to miss than Amazon, so it was for that simple reason that I made the switch. That and Academy just has not budged with Luca Guadagnino lately. I'm playing a dangerous game though, predicting Julia Roberts for Best Actress but not including her movie into Best Picture. Kieran Culkin did the same from A Real Pain just recently though, so it's not impossible. I think my predictions still make sense, right? Avatar 3. I think it's also pretty risky not predicting Avatar, Fire and Ash, but I couldn't really fit it in. I do think sequels have declining results at the Oscars unless if it's the last in the series, because there's the mentality that, oh, they already awarded that, or oh, they can just award the next one. Also, looking at my demographics, saying variety in the nominations pool is important to me, and Popcorn Munchers already have their locks. Not only do they have their main representative original film Sinners, but Wicked 2's all but guaranteed to get in too, and that is pretty set as their second pick. I think Avatar 3 would have to get in over Wicked 2, but I don't think that's gonna happen. And it is an entirely different movie from the artsier stuff that are still in contention. I don't see Avatar 3 getting in, it's just a puzzle piece that's not fitting in my head. Frankenstein. Like I said, I predicted Del Toro's Frankenstein for a lot, so I feel afraid not including it in my Best Picture 10, but I couldn't do 2 horror movies here. Ella McKay. Right now, I have Sinners representing both the Popcorn Muncher and Messenger demographics, but as far as I can tell, it is rare that a movie fully embodies both kinds of voters. So I wanted to be on the lookout for other social-political satire-like films that could get in, and the alternate I picked out was Ella McKay, a film about a younger woman, the titular Ella McKay, running for governor over her mentor, an older man, and that causing some drama. The premise seems like it has a lot of potential to embody our times, covering elections, likely gender and the generational divide too. Let me put it this way, if this is a Searchlight, Amazon, or even Focus Features film, I would have Ella McKay in my 10 without question. But it looks like 20th Century Studios is distributing it, and they are probably going to be busy with Deliver Me From Nowhere, obvious Oscar bait, or even Avatar 3, which I'm sure they'll be prioritizing over this one. The Life of Chuck. I came down on The Life of Chuck considerably. I think in hindsight it was a mistake to put so much stock in it winning TIFF's People's Choice last year since it won that last year. One of the main reasons TIFF's People's Choice is such a major correlate for a Best Picture nominee is the recency bias of it, so it's not going to be a perfect fit. I don't know what I was thinking. It is also like, the more times I see that trailer, the more I think this movie doesn't look very good. Last time, while I was waiting for the wedding banquet, no lie, the trailer came on and the people in the theater room just started laughing. They weren't supposed to be laughing, it's supposed to be schmaltzy and inspiring, but they were laughing! Uh-oh! Still, it did win TIFF's People's Choice, so I cannot ignore that. The movie does have a following. Hamnet. I've said my piece on Hamnet. It could happen, but I think Begonia is more likely now. Sound of Falling. We'll have to wait for Cannes, but I do wonder if Sound of Falling will supplant Sentimental Value as an international film critical darling. It is on my radar, but I don't see it at the moment. Overall, hopefully all these movies are good. That'll make predictions harder, but that is a good problem to have. Anyway, see ya! If you like this video, please give it a little like and a comment and a ring-ding-bing of the little bell icon down at the bottom, please. Thank you very much.